All right, what's up? What's good? What's happening? What it do, baby? You are tuned in to another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy X, aka Zay, government name Xavier, of course, coming at you, joined by my brother from another. Y'all know him as Kory Blackshear, aka KB. KB, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's happening? What's happening?
Man, um, it's hard to believe that we are 9 Sundays away from the start of the 2026 NFL season, at least in terms of it being on Sundays, because we know that this year the season is going to start on a Wednesday, followed up by a Thursday game. But it'll be here before we know it, man. It's like we go about 6 months without football, and then the closer the time gets here, it's here. And it's like it's not only like that with the NFL, man. It's like that with college too. You got media days going on right now. The Big 12 media day this week. The ACC is next week. The SEC media day week is the week after that. I'll actually be covering that. I'll be sure to share with everybody what that experience is like. But KB, go ahead and let's share with the listeners and the viewers what we are going to be doing for the next 4 weeks.
So for the next 4 weeks, I'm gonna give a pretty much a breakdown, going by the divisions, giving to everyone like an insight to the moves that each team has made, and we'll give our initial reaction to those moves. We'll go off of who we think has the advantage in those divisions, and kind of give you a kind of a recap of the offseason while also jumping into what we think is going to go on this upcoming season as far as predictions for the division, as far as who we feel like is going to be inside the playoff picture, who's going to be on the outside looking in. So that's just what we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be breaking down each division, starting with the NFC and the AFC North today. Um, and so we'll just be, trying to focus more so on any draft acquisitions, any departures from the team, anything that has any value. We'll be talking about it this week. Oh, the next 4 weeks. I'm sorry.
And we'll be breaking this down by compass direction, y'all. So that's why we're doing the AFC and the NFC North this week. But I do want to add before we jump into our preview of teams in the AFC North Division, if there is other big news happening in the sports world outside of what we have already planned to discuss with these topics for the next 4 weeks, we will jump into those topics. For example, there's a big domino that we're waiting to still fall for the upcoming NBA season, and that is where is Mr. LeBron James going to play year 24. I promise you, if we get that news, we will bring it to you right here and we'll give you our reaction to it. But this is the focus for where we're going right now because, like I said to begin this whole thing off, man, training camps will be here in just a few weeks. And once training camps get here and the preseason gets underway, the countdown clock is officially on to the start of the season. So it's time to start talking football right now, if we're being honest. You don't want to wait until training camp to really start getting those conversations underway. So we're going to begin with the AFC North, and we got to start with the Baltimore Ravens. KB, what an offseason it's been for them. John Harbaugh, for the first time since the 2008 season, is not going to be the head coach. They have a new leader at the helm coming in. Of course, we know the Max Crosby trade that was and then that turned out to not be. That led to the Trey Hendrickson signing. A lot of things happening over there.
Yeah, I mean that's to say it very like politely. Like it's gonna be a new era in Baltimore. I think that if we're gonna be completely honest, X, I think this was one of those off seasons for them I wasn't too happy with. I think that they lost more than they actually gained. I think, bringing in a new coaching staff, also the Knicks deal that would have landed you Max Crosby in his prime. I think you also have to look at it like, yeah, you did acquire Trey Hendrickson, who, I still think is a hell of a player. I just think that when we're comparing like tier levels, I don't think he's on the same tier as a Max Crosby. And I think that is why I looked at it like this offseason hasn't been that significant for the Baltimore Ravens, because I still feel like when it comes down to it, getting Lamar Jackson some help on the outside would have still been something that I think they needed more of. I think that they still need more than one option to go to because Mark Andrews is getting older. You lost Isaiah Likely. You don't have those same weapons. We know that Derrick Henry is still getting up there in age. So there's a couple of things that I would have liked to seen them, go after, especially like, initially out there in free agency. But they're going to still be, as long as they have Lamar Jackson, they'll still be a factor as far as the AFC North. How much of a factor this year, because there has been teams, especially one of their major rivals, that did significantly get better. So I want to see exactly what this new regime is going to be like and how Trey Hendrickson can help them as far as their pass rush. That's going to be something that's going to be big for me. I hope it's going to be, something that Baltimore fans are going to be excited to see. But it's a lot of, I'm going to say I'm optimistic of what they can be, but I'm still a lot of question marks out there for them.
When it comes to the Trey Hendrickson deal, and you don't usually see this with the Baltimore Ravens, and we could be very wrong with where we're thinking on this, but it feels like they signed him to a deal banking on him going back into being a form of what he used to be. Just a few seasons ago, prior to the injuries that have been piling up and everything, because he's been injured the past few seasons in Cincinnati. Not season-ending injuries necessarily, but he's been pretty banged up. And it's like they're banking on the fact that they're going to get a Trey Hendrickson who was with the New Orleans Saints before he moved on to the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's like, hey, this guy is now north of 30 years old. And you don't get younger, you just continue to get older. And as you get older, you don't necessarily become a more durable version of yourself either. Unless you're Tom Brady, who has Alex Guerrero and they're doing plyometrics or whatever that stuff is that they're doing over there.
Biggest anomaly in sports, bro.
Yes.
The biggest anomaly.
Him, LeBron James, it's a few out there. But you talked about the Ravens not doing anything to really add too much to Lamar's weapons on the outside. Here was the biggest red flag for me that they did this offseason. Not only did they not add to his weapons on the outside, they started to take away from his protection on the inside. Losing Tyler Lindenbaum, the center, that to me is the most significant thing that they did this offseason that I think could hurt them.
And it's a good thing that you brought up that point because Lamar is he has sort of changed his game a little bit. He hasn't been running the ball as much as he used to because we knew when he came into the league, he was an electric runner. Now he's starting to try to get more into into staying in the pocket, but that's also because the injuries have started to pile up a little bit more. The little nicks that were here and there, they're getting more significant now to where he's missing good. Like when he does miss duration of time, it's a good, few weeks here and there. And he's not, if you ask Lamar Jackson, he probably even tell you himself, he might say that he's still the explosive player that he once was, but we saw what he was, especially winning those 2 MVPs. And we know what he's been like as far as these injuries once they started to pile up. So I think that taking away his protection while also saying that you're our guy, we're going to go as far as you go. I think it's kind of like you're not being consistent with the message. Are you trying to keep him healthy and keep him upright? Because your Super Bowl goes with Lamar Jackson. No matter how you want to shape it, it goes with Lamar Jackson. And if you can't keep him healthy, I don't think a backup is going to come in and win you a Super Bowl. I don't think this is one of those situations because, and actually, to be honest with you, him losing Tyler Linderbaum actually is more significant than him not having outside weapons because if he's not able to play a full season, I don't know exactly what your chances are of winning this division because, like I said, Pittsburgh got better. I'm sure that Cincinnati is going to come back more retooled than they actually were last season, hopefully. But you're going to have competition in that division. So it's like, I don't think you understand that, like, to me, you lost this offseason, to be honest. You lost. You did not do enough to upgrade from in the positions of need that you needed to while you also lost. Like, I understand the need for Trey Hendrickson, but it was almost like it's kind of like, oh, you taking, whatever's left over because you go from Max Crosby to Trey Hendrickson. It's kind of like, yes, I like it, but I didn't love it. Like, I didn't love it like I would have loved that Max Crosby deal. So and like you said, him being north of 30 years old, not having the same explosive motor that he had when he was one of the league leaders in sacks a few years ago. So it's a little different. So did I feel the same way that I felt when that, Max Crosby deal was first announced? No, I didn't. I felt like it was a good deal, but I didn't feel like it was you know, a team changing deal, like something that was going to alter the course of their season. I could be wrong, but it just didn't feel that way to me.
Let me ask you a question. And I promise we're going to talk everybody about some of the things that the Ravens did this offseason that we did like and that we do think are good moves. But when you look at what's been going on with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens the past few years, and I'm going different sport here, but it's a very similar scenario if you pay attention to the tea leaves. Does this situation not remind you of what we started to see with Giannis and the Bucks around 2023?
It's similar because it's kind of like you got a guy in the prime of his career, multi-time MVP, and instead of adding to it to extend that prime out a little bit more, you saw the injuries start piling up. Same thing with Giannis. They did not add enough to keep themselves that championship window open.
And let me add that I think the biggest thing to this, and we've heard different stories out of Baltimore, whether it was Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the team that wanted John Harbaugh out. Did Lamar Jackson play a role in wanting John Harbaugh out? No matter what the deal is, you start having different head coaches coming in there, man. Obviously, them hiring Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, away from the Chargers, one of the best young defensive minds in football. You don't know exactly what his long-term plans are for what he wants his vision to be for the team. We know that Lamar Jackson's one of the top quarterbacks in football, and I'm sure he knows that too. But is that somebody that he wants to continue to build with long term? Because keep in mind, KB, Lamar Jackson has not gotten a new deal from the Baltimore Ravens yet. And it doesn't seem like they're headed in that direction, at least not right now.
Yeah, not right now. It seems like you don't know. You're right though. You don't know exactly what Jesse Minter is like, what his vision for this team is going to be because it's so early on, and that was John Harbaugh's guy, so he really has no loyalty to Lamar or anybody else for that matter, unless it's a deal that he, personally signed off on. So, go ahead.
And the Jesse Minter factor is one thing. We saw Steve Bisciotti at the end of the season in those press conferences and some of the things that he was saying. Is he even still all the way in on Lamar Jackson? That's something you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm gonna tell you, X, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. The thing that worries me the most about this team, they're I don't think a lot of people remember how bad that pass defense was last year. Like it ranked towards the bottom of the league. And I still don't see anything that would have made it any different. That's going to make it any different for this upcoming season. You address the pass rush, which should help you in cleaning up some of those numbers so you don't have to worry about the back end getting torched because they ain't going to have all day to throw. But if that's all you're hitching your wagon on is Trey Hendrickson being able to get to the quarterback, I still see you struggling in the secondary. I still see some of those high powered offenses being able to get off on you on a week to week basis because I don't think you did enough. You ranking 30th in the passing game. I think that's going to be that's a scary thing for any, especially a defensive minded coach who.
So I want to tell you two secondary moves that they made, and I want you to tell me if they move you or not.
Okay.
At safety, they brought in Jalen Hawkins, and at cornerback, they brought in Chidobe Awuzie. Do either one of those moves move you to the point that you think that they could have a true bolstering effect to helping turn things around in Baltimore when it comes to that secondary?
I like the Awuzie deal because it's a good value deal. I think that's a decent move. Not nothing like of significance that just wows me, but it is a decent move. I think that Awuzie can help them bolster that secondary, but I don't think that it's enough. And the Jalen Hawkins deal, Jalen Hawkins is a great player, but I just don't think that's enough to kind of warrant like a wow thing because you still don't have right now a significant, like, you don't have a significant enough secondary to be where I have no fear going against your secondary on a week-to-week basis, and that's the problem.
It's like you have Kyle Hamilton and then you don't really have anything else. And that's no disrespect to guys like Marlon Humphrey out there. But the fact of the matter is he looked older last year. Let's just keep it a buck. He looked older
He
last season.
he was getting picked on more than I've ever seen him get picked on in his career so far. Like he was getting picked on to the point where I remember that people were going and pulling up tweets and everything else that he was saying. Like it was bad last year, but it was significantly bad as as a total defense. So it kind of got swept under the rug because if like they were all bad, but him specifically, it was not good from a personal standpoint. He was getting thrown at a lot more than I've seen him get thrown at before. And so I think that that's the reason why I'm not so sure, because it does feel like it's Kyle Hamilton and friends out there. And that's no disrespect to the rest of the defense, but that's what it feels like in that secondary. It feels like it's just Kyle Hamilton and company, and you're hoping that that pass rush now can get home, because if it can't, you're looking at ranking bottom of the half of the league again for a second straight year. So I don't know. I'm not really too thrilled about everything that they've done this offseason, to be honest with you.
But this is where we talk about some things that I feel like where they did good. And I don't know if you echo the same sentiments with me on this. Jesse Mentors is based off of the defenses that we saw him have in his 2 seasons with the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh. He's one of the best young defensive minds in the game. So they brought in a defensive-minded head coach to mainly try and shore that defense back up. They also brought in a young, bright offensive coordinator in Declan Doyle. So it's a whole new culture that they're building there in Baltimore. I also like the first-round selection of Vega from Penn State, the guard. It doesn't make up for the loss of Tyler Lindenbaum to the Las Vegas Raiders, but it is something. So I feel like they're trying to at least establish a new culture and put a good foundation in place.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in that point. I think that with Vega, that move would have been, more significant had they kept Lindenbaum. I think that move, bringing him back while also drafting a guard, would have helped further, my belief that they actually are investing more into Lamar and trying to help his protection, because I think that it was addition by subtraction, which doesn't really kind of wow me, because I think that if you're going to go out, you're going to lose one of the best centers in the league. I think that you know what I'm saying? I can't really say that they're like, I know they're building a culture and it's slow, but it's going to be a slowly built thing. Like it's going to be a process, but that worries me. The fact that that was all that they're really doing. I'm not sold completely on the Baltimore Ravens. Not yet.
The thing that bothers me the most about the Lindenbaum move and them losing him is the fact that Ronnie Stanley is not the same guy at left tackle that he used to be. And we know for a great offensive line to be a great offensive line, all 5 pieces of that have to be working together. Now, we could be wrong, and they could surprise us, and the center that's replacing Lindenbaum could come out, and he could be a Pro Bowler, an all-pro guy. We won't see until we actually see these guys take the field. But for the first time in a long time, there is uncertainty with the Baltimore Ravens organization, and that's not something we usually say about them.
Yeah. But I will say, I will give them credit, because I do think Jacoby Lane, them selecting him, I think he'll actually be a pretty good player for them. I know they selected 2 wide receivers, Jacoby Lane being one of them. I forgot my man out of Indiana. I apologize, but I know that he was selected as well. I just really hope that, that'll help them, because like I said, I don't think if Zay Flowers is just the only guy out there that you really can rely on, I don't think you're going to, him and Mark Andrews, and we've seen Mark Andrews not be the same Mark Andrews of old. So I do think that they've done a few things that I like, but it's just not enough for me to give them the overall perception of they did have a good offseason. That's the only thing I'll say.
Do you think that a guy like LaJohntay Wester, who they selected in the draft last year, do you think he can take a step forward in being a bigger playmaker for this team?
I mean, possibly. Possibly. I'm like I said, I'm optimistic on him as well. Like I don't really know if he would be the guy. Like I said, I would think Jacoby Lane would be the guy that would actually take a step up and actually be that, solidified number two coming out because he'll have the opportunity to do so. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm like I said, that's more of a wait and see for me.
Well, one team in this division that did take a step forward going in the right direction, in my opinion, that would be the Cincinnati Bengals, especially when it comes down to making moves to try to shore up that defense. Acquiring Dexter Lawrence II from the New York Giants. He didn't have a Dexter Lawrence type of season last year, but maybe that's simply because he needs a change of scenery. I'm not giving up on him yet. Jonathan Allen is not what Jonathan Allen used to be, but he's going to provide more for them on that defensive line than what they were getting last season from some of the guys they were getting it from. Being able to re-sign Orlando Brown Jr. on that offensive line, I like that move for him as well. Bringing back Joe Flacco, I like that move. I think it's good. It gives them some form of reassurance at the backup at the quarterback position because when Joe Burrow is on, Joe Burrow is arguably the best quarterback in football. He is in that type of conversation. But the part about him not being on is usually him not being able to be on the field because he stays injured a lot. And that was the case last season too. Hopefully that's not the case for this year. They did restructure T. Higgins' deal. Jamar Chase is still there. So to me, this is the most interesting team in this division and one of the more interesting teams in the NFL. And Joe Burrow has high hopes for this team himself. He compared them to his 2019 LSU squad.
Well, I'm not going that far. I mean, I think that squad was historic, like in every sense of the word. But I do like the moves they made. I think they addressed a lot of things, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That's what I really love what they did. I'm also say a move that you didn't say, bringing in Boye Mafe from the Seattle Seahawks. That was a significant move because now you have a significant pass rush with him, Dexter Lawrence. You did lose Trey Hendrickson, but you did like this is what I meant by addition by subtraction. You did it in the right way because now you also signed in Brian Cook. Brian Cook came with a 3-year deal, I believe. Yes, 3-year deal. I think that you're trying to like. I think the Cincinnati Bengals know that they have a high power offense. As long as Joe Burrow is healthy, they have a high power offense. They have the wide receivers they need. They have a great running back in Chase Brown. I think that they just have to understand that defense in this division, especially, is going to win championships. You invested. That's why you went out there and got Dexter Lawrence because you knew he can be a significant player in the pass rush and as well in as far as run stoppage as well. So they did enough to me this offseason to warrant some like optimism as far as like this team can go far. I think that they're still not all the way there because I feel like they got a couple more moves that they could make, and then they'll be right back into that playoff contender type of role. But I love everything that they did this offseason. I think that they addressed where they went wrong last year. I think that you have a healthy Joe Burrow. I think that this is one of those seasons where you could see Cincinnati get back to the Cincinnati of old under Zach Taylor, where they were, going toe to toe in the playoffs with the Chiefs and things of that nature, where they could be significant in the come time for the playoffs to start. I think that they have one of the best offenses when Joe Burrow's healthy. I think that the defense was always just a question mark. You addressed that. You addressed the defense, not only the line. You addressed your back end with your secondary. So I love it.
I think we both can agree on this too. This is a make or break year for Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. If you can't take the next step this year or at least get back to the playoffs, I think there'll be a new head coach there.
Yeah. And honestly, it was a lot of, question marks of whether he was going to survive last year. But he did have a lot to contend with. So I'm glad they gave him at least one more year. And hopefully, what I'm saying, if Cincinnati stays healthy, I think that they're going to be very scary come playoff time because I do think that this team can go on those type of runs where they look unstoppable on offense. And now that they look like they, even though, like you said, with Jonathan Allen not being the same Jonathan Allen, I think that it's going to be a committee thing at this point. I think that they have vets, the right vets on the team, as far as on that defensive line, that they can make some noise. It's just more so about health at this point. Can they stay healthy? Can Joe Burrow return to form where he was, an MVP candidate a couple years ago? Can he return to form? And I think that if the answer is yes, Cincinnati Bengals will win this division, or could be in play to win this division. I'll say that.
But the thing is, when he's healthy, he's always an MVP candidate. That's the thing about it. It's like we just need him to be able to stay on the field. If he's able to stay on the field, we know that he's going to produce big results because, like we said to begin this whole thing about the Bengals, when Joe Burrow is on and he's out there, that is arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. There are weeks that you will take him over Patrick, you'll take him over Josh, take him over Lamar, you'll take him over all those guys. That is what his talent is really like. But I want to move over to their in-state rival, the Cleveland Browns. And I know that for the Browns, they don't move a lot of people. They're one of the laughing stocks of the NFL usually. But I honestly think, KB, I don't think they're going to have a great season per se. But I do think that they're going to be a wild card of at least being an interesting team to watch. Because they got some interesting things going on over there. Number one, you got Kevin Stefanski out of the building. And you got a head coach in there now who at least publicly is showing the belief in both Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. So he believes in what he has at the quarterback position. They did trade Myles Garrett just a couple of weeks ago to the Los Angeles Rams, as we talked about right here on this show. But in exchange for him, you got a very good young defensive pass rusher in Jared Verse and a slew of draft picks as well. You're able to add to the offensive line, Elton Jenkins, Zion Johnson. You added Quincy Williams in at the linebacker spot. And I also like some of the things I saw them do in the draft as well. So we'll see what year one is going to be like under Todd Monken. I don't have high expectations for this team, but I also don't necessarily think they're going to be the worst team in the NFL this season either, like some people are thinking.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that, Deshaun Watson coming back, still, I mean, if you can even get him to be somewhat of the Deshaun Watson of old, I think that, that definitely helps you out. I think that getting Jared Verse also helps out because this defense is going to look a little bit different because they haven't had to be accustomed to being without Myles Garrett ever. So now that you have, Jared Verse in, he's going to be motivated because the one thing he did say, he loved the fact that a team wanted him and that they were willing to, trade for him. I look at it like Jared Verse, we know what kind of pass rush. He was a versatile pass rusher who was also great in the run game as well while he was with the Los Angeles Rams. Todd Monken, he's going to take his lumps in this first year. I think also when you said that there was a belief between, Deshaun Watson and also with Shedeur Sanders as well, I think that's a big thing because while Kevin Stefanski was the quarterback, while Kevin Stefanski was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, we also knew if he had to turn to someone while Deshaun Watson was out, his guy was Dylan Gabriel. We knew that. He wasn't making any bones about it. That was the guy that he wanted. That was the guy he wanted to draft. That was his guy. Now it's kind of like, all right, we know that we have these two guys that have both been, one guy's been proven in the league, hasn't had the best of luck last couple of seasons, but we know he's proven in the league and he's done it before. And couldn't he, can Shedeur also be that guy when his number is called? Can he go out there and make it happen? We saw a few good things last year. We saw a few bad things. It was all a learning curve. Now, what I am curious about, can Quinshon Judkins, can he continue to develop? Because I saw flashes of him being a great a great future running back for the Cleveland Browns. I just want to see can he take more of a leap as well. But I do think that they're going to be an interesting team because that defense last year was one of the best defenses in the league. Um, I don't know what it's going to look like now without the premier pass rusher that Myles Garrett was, because, like I said, you you didn't like go from the greatest to the worst. Jared Verse is a hell of a player. I think that a lot of people are sleeping on him because he's not Myles Garrett. We know that, but he ain't no slouch. This is a defensive rookie of the year. He ain't no slouch. So this is a guy that we've seen do it, and he's done it in playoff games of significance. So I think that Cleveland Brown fans are going to definitely love him. I think that they're getting a stud no matter what. I think that it's going to be one of those things that people are just going to be like, they're going to be a little hurt over the fact that Myles Garrett is no longer a Cleveland Brown. But just know that you're getting a young guy who's, you know what I'm saying, who's one of the best defensive pass rushers in the league.
We talked about this when the trade happened. There's only a few players or a few certain deals that the Rams would have even been willing to entertain that would have involved them giving up Jared Verse in the first place. This just so happened to have been one of them, and rightfully so it should be, because this is the best defensive player in the NFL. This is one of the best defensive players in the history of the NFL when you look at what he's been able to accomplish throughout his career. But if Jared Verse really does want to be in Cleveland and he embraces being in Cleveland the way it looks like the Browns organization is embracing him, it shouldn't be too much of a drop-off for that defense, honestly.
No, it's not going to be a drop off. Like, and if it is a drop off, it's not going to be a significant drop off. I'll say that because while Jared Verse may not have end up with the same sack numbers that the reigning defensive player of the year Myles Garrett had while also breaking the sack record, I don't think he's going to have that same impact. But I don't think he necessarily has to make this defense still be one of the best in the league. I think that he just has to be him. He can't go in there looking like thinking that he has to fill shoes that Myles Garrett left. I think that's the wrong ideology, and I think that would be the wrong way to approach it. I think that he just has to continue to be the player that he was, because we know what he became in LA. We saw it from the first year that he stepped out on the field. Saw it at Florida State. If you were a college fan, you saw it there. So I think that he doesn't necessarily have to replicate the things that Myles Garrett did. I think that he just has to continue to being the player that he is, continue to do the things that he does well, because one thing that he does well that I think is very, significant in his game is the fact that he is a great run stopper. He sets the edge very well. I think that's one of those things that's very underrated and that doesn't get highlighted enough. He can definitely set the edge when it comes to the run game. He can pass rush as well, and I think that you're getting a very versatile player. And for me, I think that if you're talking about drop-offs, because we've seen Cleveland be in a lot of games because of their defense specifically, I think that this is one of those things where they're not going to, I think that to push the panic button, because you also got to look at the picks that you got out of that deal as well. You are going to be pretty set up for the future, because those picks that you got out of that deal turned into gold. Then, yeah, you made the right deal because you weren't going anywhere with Myles Garrett. And you're probably not going anywhere at the immediate, there's not going to be an immediate impact right now because you're not going anywhere either right now. But I think that you're preparing for the future. You're going into a situation where you have a new head coach. Let's go ahead and get some youth in here. Let's get a guy who's proven in the league, and let's go ahead and just reshape this whole team. I think that Deshaun Watson is going to be very interesting because, like I said, if he can even be somewhat of the Deshaun Watson that we grew up watching in Houston, you're not going to be as bad as people think you are, because you have quarterbacks behind that are actually decent, that can actually go out there and win you football games. I think that Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders actually can go out there and win you football games. I think that Deshaun Watson is the guy you go with because he not only is he on that contract that you signed him to a couple of years ago that makes it to where you need to play him, but he's also a veteran. And I think that Shedeur Sanders, learning from him, it'll do nothing but help him out in his career. I think that it's just one of those things that you know, will Isaiah Bond continue to develop? Jerry Jeudy, how is he going to continue to go out there and get it done? Um, it's just a couple of things I need to see. You lose David Njoku to the San Diego Chargers, or yeah, the Los Angeles Chargers. My bad.
Wish they were still in San Diego.
Right. You lose David Njoku, so that was a blow because we also seen that David Njoku has been one of the best pass catchers from the tight end spot throughout the course of his career since he came out of Miami. So it is going to be a little bit different. I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think. I do see them not being like bottom dwellers, but I do see them being at least competitive. Even if they don't win all these games, I think that they'll be at least competitive, which is more than I could have said about them last year because they were handicapped on offense. I think that last year they were handicapped, and I think that the defense had to win them games if they were going to be anywhere like in the picture. They had to win games. Now I think that they need the offense to come along for the ride.
We talked about the offseason moves they made in terms of free agency too. But I really like the draft moves of getting Spencer Fono, another offensive tackle, and Casey Concepcion. You mentioned Jerry Jeudy. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think he's long for being there. I think Casey Concepcion is going to be the person who ends up taking his place, and they're going to find a way to get Jerry Jeudy out of town.
What Steve Smith called it. He called it a few years ago. He did call it. So, when we're talking about what Jerry Jeudy is, I'm not gonna lie. Jerry Jeudy for me ain't really that much different than Jerry Jeudy of when he was in Denver. He's not the talent is there. It's there, but what you get out of him is completely a whole different subject. Like I feel like that the game where that got highlighted where he was basically it seemed like he was getting on to Shedeur Sanders, but also, fumbling the ball the way he did, where he was kind of like Cadillacing it and, lost focus. I think that Jerry Jeudy has a lot of things that he has to prove. We were all talking about Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur Sanders now is going into his second year. Jerry Jeudy, what year is this for Jerry Jeudy? He's been in the league at least, 6 seasons, 7 seasons? So it's just like, bro, you haven't proven enough to warrant the way you talk or the way that you get on teammates. I think that you need to prove it more than anybody. I do think Deshaun Watson will help him out. I don't know how much. Because, like I said, Jerry Jeudy to me has been the same middle of the pack receiver he's been his whole career, which was disappointing because we all saw him at Alabama and thought he was going to be a superstar.
KB, here's just the fact of the matter. Jerry Jeudy has to want this for Jerry Jeudy. And you can put him in whatever situation you want to put him in. If he doesn't want this for himself, it's not going to happen. And we're starting to run out of time for him to really emerge into that top conversation. He had a 1,000-yard season in 2024, if not a little more than that. And I understand it was a quarterback carousel last year in Cleveland, but as you alluded to, there were things that he was out there doing that wasn't exactly helping his own case. So I think he's got to want it for himself. And I think long-term, he's going to have to figure that out somewhere else besides Cleveland. Because as they brought in a new regime again, I don't think that they're going to want to continue to hold on to him.
I mean, that's fair because, like I said, he's lucky that they've held on to him for this long. To be honest with you, I was frustrated with him last season because I think that if you're going to have a guy who's a rookie who has all the noise behind him and everything, you help him out, make it easier for him, not make it harder for him. And it just don't feel like that he's that breakout explosive receiver that they thought they were getting when they got him from Denver. I know that a lot of people probably thought that he was going to change of scenery was all he needed. No. I think that Jerry Jeudy is who Jerry Jeudy is. And unless something changes within him, I don't think that there's going to be anything different to expect going into next season.
And to the people who thought that, I just want to ask them a question. When Denver did finally move on from him, who was the head coach there? It was Sean Payton. So it was a coach there who was building a culture and knew what he was doing. And he knew that he did not want him to be a part of what the Denver Broncos were doing going forward. See, and I know for most of Jerry Jeudy's tenure in Denver, it was not the most ideal situation for him. The Russell Wilson deal turned out to be a disaster there. We understand all of that. But when you got team architects like Sean Payton and others coming into the building and they're getting you out of there for as quickly as they can, that tells us something. And Todd Monken just doesn't strike me as the type of guy that's going to want to hang on to him either. And I don't think that Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry are going to have an issue saying farewell to his contract.
Yeah, he would be one of those players that could get moved in a low key, like a low key trade. But like I said, until Jerry Jeudy shows us anything, there's nothing to really be excited about him either. Like I said, I think you need to be more excited about Isaiah Bond and Casey Concepcion. I think those are the two players that would be the ones that I would be more so looking forward to seeing. Like the young talent on this team, those two players I just mentioned and Quinshawn Judkins, I think that those are the players that you need to really focus your energy on, not focus what Jerry Jeudy can give you. Because, like I said, I have not seen anything that would make me get excited about his game. I think that Steve Smith was right calling him out the way he did because he proved all he did was prove Steve Smith wrong. Right. I'm sorry. He proved him right because he's saying that I would not go trade for this guy. This guy is not going to win you football games. And unfortunately, he's proved him right every stop, every time, because this just shows you he can have proven quarterback play, he can have veteran quarterback play, he can have everything. Jerry Jeudy is his biggest problem right now. He is his own problem, and I think until he learns that he has to just, put his head down, go to work, he's going to be the exact same player pretty much the duration of his career.
But back to the Browns overall, I think they're going to be the most interesting 5 to 6 win team in the NFL. They're going to be a team that I think wins 5 to 6 games that you probably look at and say, if a couple of things had went right in a few more games, they probably could have been a 7 to 8 win team. So I'm interested to see how things are going to play out in Cleveland. And I haven't said that in a very long time, being interested in the Browns. Final team in this division, my boys in the black and gold, the black and yellow, as Wiz Khalifa once sang, once he once rapped, Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is back for a year, signing a 1 year contract. It's going to be his final season in the NFL. The most underrated move they made to me was acquiring Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts. He's going to be on the other side of DK Metcalf. I think that's going to be something to watch. Adding Jamel Dean, Jaquan Brisker, Darnell Savage to that secondary. I like those moves. Rico Dowdle coming in after a nice season in Carolina. And I think he will help provide some balance at that running back position for this team. But obviously, the biggest thing to talk about when it comes to the Steelers is this new regime that they're going in that's not going to be led by Mike Tomlin for the first time since 2007. He stepped down as the head coach at the end of the season. And now Mike McCarthy is the man that's in charge. A Pittsburgh native, grew up a Steelers fan. But it's not exactly the Steelers' way. Since 1969, they've only had 4 head coaches, counting Mike McCarthy. You had Chuck Noll there. You had Bill Cowher there, and you had Mike Tomlin there. This is one of the organizations that is usually one of the most stable at that head coach position. But they also usually hire them at very young ages, KB. Chuck Noll was hired in his 30s. Bill Cowher was hired in his 30s. Mike Tomlin was hired in his 30s. Mike McCarthy is north of 60 years old. So I don't know how long he's going to be there. I don't doubt that he's going to produce results because I watched that in Green Bay and Dallas. I think it's a great fit, especially I'm excited for where the offense could go under Mike McCarthy, that it just was no longer going with Mike Tomlin. And I don't know if that was play calling or because they just weren't getting the right pieces in play that they needed there. But I'm excited for what Mike McCarthy could potentially do with them. But it's going to be a different year. Not being able to see Mike Tomlin over there on the sideline, that's going to be something that's going to be a little tough to get used to.
And honestly, who would have thought the two most tenured head coaches, I believe, in the league at the time will both be leaving in the same offseason. John Harbaugh now with the New York Giants. Mike Tomlin has not, he is not coaching currently right now with a team, but Depends on what his interests lie. He could be with another team in the near future.
We will see him on Sunday Night Football, though, because he's a
Yes.
part of the NBC family now.
Yeah, and we could see that being one of those things where, that could give him the itch to want to go back and coach. Or he could be one of those guys that's, loyal to the black and gold and never coaches again. It is very well a possibility.
Could never coach again for that reason. Also, could coach just simply because being the broadcaster, I mean, it's an easier grind to have to pull than being a head coach of an NFL franchise. And
And very lucrative.
I say that because look at Bill Cowher. When
Hmm.
Bill Cowher and the Steelers parted ways, he was only 49 years old. There was a lot of coaching life that was still left there if he wanted to do it, and he just never went back to do it.
Yeah. And for Steelers fans, I know some people were saying that, yeah, fire Mike Tomlin, fire Mike Tomlin. But I don't think people understand the level of consistency that he gave you all over, a long, illustrious career. He got you to Super Bowl. He won you Super Bowls. And this is a franchise that's not accustomed to, being a bottom dweller. He at least was giving you winning seasons, which was something that he could hang his hat on, that he was getting you at least being in a competitive spot, especially in the division. Now, I love what they did this offseason. From an offensive standpoint, you did it. You got one of the premier backs that was out there in the free agency pool, Enrico Dowd. You stole him away from the Carolina Panthers on a very cheap deal to me. 2 years, 12 million or whatever it was. Then you go out and get a very big playmaker and Michael Pittman Jr., put him opposite of DK Metcalf. You still have Darnell Washington. You have I think you went out and got Robert Tunyon or whatever his name is. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. Robert Tunyon, who's another good pass catching tight end as well. So, and then you still have Pat Freiermuth. So you did make a very significant upgrade because now Aaron Rodgers has the weapons on the outside to go and win football games. This is why I look at it like Pittsburgh to me, and as far as this division goes, I put them and Cincinnati neck and neck as far as who had the best offseason. Because as far as free agent deals, I think that this was one of the best offseasons that Steelers can say they had in a long time. You also went and got Travis Homer, who's another capable back coming out the backfield. So it is looking like that it will be a running back by committee situation, which is something that I don't think that Rico Dowdle was looking forward to, but I do think that it goes and will help with his longevity and being able to finish the season the right way, because I do feel like that Rico Dowdle can be in line to take over the bulk of the carries, but he is going to be splitting carries as well. So I think that this being Aaron Rodgers' last season, he's going out with his guy that he won so many games with in Green Bay and Mike McCarthy. Also, is to say that this may be the last ride for Cameron Hayward as well. So, both players, on their last hoorah. So it is going to be very interesting to see. I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be in a position where they did invest a lot in getting him some help. I think also the Jamel Dean thing, stealing him away from Tampa Bay was a big thing. But that secondary, also signing back Asante Samuel Jr., big thing as well. So you have to look at it like Pittsburgh. I know that last season didn't end the way that you wanted it to, but you got something to be optimistic about because, like I said, Aaron Rodgers can still go out there and give you consistency from the quarterback position. I think you win this division. You have a chance to win this division, and you're gonna have some competition. Don't get me wrong, but I think that right now, as far as talent wise and what you added, Pittsburgh got to be happy with this offseason. I really do like everything that they did from free agency standpoint, also addressing the outside weapons needed for Aaron Rodgers as well. Can Mike McCarthy, build something in Pittsburgh? I think that remains to be seen, but I like everything that he did. I think everything that they did from a standpoint of going out there and getting the talent that they needed, especially in that secondary, who also features Jalen Ramsey still. I think it's going to be a big, big year for them.
I like the moves they made too, but I'm still nervous. The quarterback's 42 years old. And I really don't know what I'm going to get out of him this year. Is it going to be a version of what I got last year, or is it going to be something that's going to be a little on the downside? Could it possibly end up being a little better with the addition of Michael Pittman Jr.?
Do you feel like that at any point this season they could possibly turn to Drew Aller?
I don't know. And I simply say that because when Drew Aller was drafted there, and just about 2 weeks of him being there, we saw the report that came out that said that Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff are basically helping him unlearn everything that he had learned so far. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you.
And sometimes that could be something as simple as feeling like you have to extend the play all the way to, sometimes they say sometimes unlearning certain behavior could be even when you're trying to still look for a play to be downfield and there's no play to be made and just getting rid of the ball. So I don't know what that could be. I don't know if they will go to him at some point, but who better to learn from and sit behind than a guy that's a multi-time MVP winner, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history? That is a good question mark to bring up, though. What are you going to get out of a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers? There's no guarantee that you might get. You because like we just talked about Tom Brady being an anomaly. Tom Brady still looked better, at the end of his career than Aaron Rodgers has. Now I know Aaron Rodgers, still can still win you football games. I just don't know exactly what he will give you at this point. But you can say though they did address the weapons around him. Even getting Bernard from Alabama as another weapon is going to help. It's going to help at some point. I think that you got playmakers around him, and I think that's a big thing because now, if he can come with somewhat be some version of the player he was before, he's never going to return that MVP form. But can he at least be a serviceable quarterback? Because we've seen serviceable quarterback win games. That's I think all you need is just him to be serviceable, not turn the ball over, quick strikes. That's exactly what made Aaron Rodgers the quarterback he is today. So if he can be that, you might be in business.
And I want to make one thing clear for the listeners and the viewers. I know that he was serviceable a year ago, and I'm hopeful that he can be that again this year. I just get antsy about athletes, man, that are north of 40 years old because Father Time eventually comes knocking at the door for everybody. Some people can just defeat it longer than others. But because we talked about it here on this show, when it comes to Drew Aller, I'm very hopeful that he will end up being the long-term option at quarterback and that this isn't going to be a situation of after Aaron leaves, okay, we still don't have our franchise guy in the building. Because that's a place you don't want to be. And if they were going to end up going through that, this was going to be the season to do it. But if you hire a guy like Mike McCarthy as your coach, you're not trying to tank. You're not trying to rebuild. So we've broken down all four teams here. What's your predictions for this AFC North Division? Who is going to win this division?
Right now, if I had to say right now, I would say that it's going to come down to Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, but if I had to pick between the two, I may go Pittsburgh. I'm only going to say that because, and that's kind of be surprising. It's not like it's like they're running away with it. I love what Cincinnati did this offseason, but I do need to know like what's going to happen as far as with Joe Burrow. If he is healthy and he's good and he returns back, like I said, I know he's always been the MVP candidate while healthy. I just need to see what this defense is going to be because I know it's going to be much improved. But if they can get to like top 15 level defense, yeah, they're going to win this division. But right now, I think I would be on the safe side and just go with Pittsburgh for the, veteran leadership that they do have.
I'm definitely going with Pittsburgh, and it's simply because I've never really trusted Zach Taylor as a head coach. I know he got the Bengals to the Super Bowl. That was a really good team he got there. I know they got back to the AFC Championship the year after that. There was still a very good team that got there. When he really has to step up and try to make something out of spare parts. He doesn't really show up to do what needs to be done. And you've seen Joe Burrow frustrated with him at times with it too. I think the Steelers win this division with a 10-7 record. That's what I think is going to end up happening. I think the Browns are going to finish in fourth, but they're going to be an interesting 5-6 win team. I think Baltimore finishes in third place with about 7 or 8 wins. And I'm going to really throw a wild card prediction at you. This will be Lamar Jackson's final season as a Baltimore Raven as a result of that.
I could see that. If they finish with that record that you're saying, I could see that. I could definitely see them saying we're going to just move on.
And that's whether he's at fault for it or not, y'all. If they don't produce the results that they need to produce, I think he's going to be out of that door because the owner pretty much already hinted at some things that he's tired of when it comes to Lamar per se, not showing up necessarily for OTAs in the offseason, and him saying that if Lamar wants to have a voice in the coaching and anything like that and who the coach is going to be, he can come here or I'll send my jet to go pick him up down in Florida. Steve Bisciotti is pretty much telling you, hey, look, I'm kind of getting tired of some of the stuff that I'm seeing here, and I'm not going to continue to put up with it. So will things on that front change? We'll see. But I honestly think that this is slowly becoming like the Giannis saga did in Milwaukee. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And maybe he buys himself another season there after this year. But I don't think that Lamar Jackson will be the long-term option year after year after year at quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. I just don't see it because I feel like we're starting to see their relationship unravel right before our eyes.
Yeah, that's fair. And like I said, I'm hoping that Lamar can go back to, being the Lamar that we always know he's been over the course of his career. And hopefully that they can surprise a lot of people because it's not looking too good just off of the moves they made. But like I said, I got them finishing third as well. 7-8 wins seems about fair, and it could even be lower than that. Just depends on how things shake up. But it's not looking too good for Baltimore. I'm going to be honest with you. And it's more so it doesn't have to necessarily be Lamar's fault for why they lose the division. But I could see this being a situation where he's on the way out of the door if this doesn't go the right way.
All right, man, let's get to some quick hitters, and we got to go to the NBA, KB, because some news came out today. That Kawhi Leonard to Toronto Raptors trade, not so fast, ladies and gentlemen. That trade is now being held up, and it will not be completed until the NBA's investigation into whether the Clippers circumvented the salary cap is completed. So the Clippers and Raptors agreed to this trade back on June 30th. Kawhi Leonard to Toronto for Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, unpredicted first-round draft picks in 2031 and 33, a 2027 first-round pick swap, and 2 second-round picks. But the Clippers said in a statement that the trade can only be finalized if the Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. KB, I do not blame the Raptors here. They say they want this trade to happen, but you cannot take the risk of these penalties not knowing exactly what they're going to be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't care what Kawhi has done for this team and this franchise. I don't think you could do that. I don't think that you could put yourself at risk of basically being penalized for something that you had nothing to do with. I feel like that, while it is very considerable thing that happened, I think that you do not need to assume any risk in this because this happened. This is something that happened while he was on the Clippers. Allow them to deal with it. And once it's finalized, then you can finalize that trade. But I would not assume any risk if I were the Raptors in this because this has nothing to do with you. I understand what Kawhi has done for this franchise, but I'm not comfortable making this deal knowing that there could be a possible suspension looming or something that could even, derail all of my hopes and dreams as far as being a contending team in the East. No.
And for those who are not familiar with exactly what this is, let's educate them a little bit on this. The investigation into the Clippers is focused on whether they circumvented the salary cap by funneling money to Kawhi Leonard through his $28 million endorsement deal with the now bankrupt green banking company Aspiration. which also had a $300 million 23-year endorsement deal with the team overall. Now, team owner Steve Ballmer, that being the Clippers, he invested $60 million into Aspiration, and he has denied that he had knowledge of Leonard's deal. I don't know, man. This might be something that they figure out before the season, or it might be something that goes into the season. But it would not shock me if Brandon Ingram and Grady Dick are still in Toronto Raptors jerseys by the time October gets here.
And I wonder how that plays into their psyche going into, like, if that is the case of where they're back in Toronto, like you just got dealt, now you're going back. And we've seen Knicks deals that happen before for different reasons, failed physicals, all kinds of things. But how does that play into, it definitely swings things, because now Toronto's looked at possibly being a top 5 team in the East to now who knows where they are, what they looked at as now, right now. And then that also changes things for the Clippers as well, because they go from, moving off of Kawhi Leonard, who, this was a failed tenure in LA, to now you're basically going from him to these, youth, like a youth movement with Keaton Wagler being, your new cornerstone player. Then you going in to now where it's a lot of things that are like question marks. I don't know exactly how these things are going to play out, but I hope that it happens before the season, starts. I hope that this, comes to a conclusion very soon, so that both teams can get closure and they can go on ahead and move on with their future plans.
Staying with the Raptors, they did have a more celebratory moment earlier this week. Kyle Lowry signing a one-day deal with the team to retire, and also learning that his jersey and his number would be retired next season. No brainer. Absolutely. This is the greatest Raptor of all time when you look at career tenure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's a guy that actually wanted to be here. Like, it's not too many players that can actually say that they've worn that Raptors jersey. We've had more talented players, but he was the guy who embraced Toronto. From him being there, you tell they were going to be a model of consistency pretty much every year in and year out. They were going to be a playoff team. They were going to be at the top of the standings in the East. Him, DeMar, their tenure together can't be understated. What they did together, although they didn't bring a championship to Toronto together, he ended up winning a championship with Kawhi Leonard, in 2019. So, yeah, greatest Raptor of all time. Whether you want to say because of the way he's the greatest ambassador for that team as well. So, like,
he might not be the most impactful Raptor of all time.
Right.
I still give that to Vince Carter.
Right.
But in terms of who the greatest Raptor is, yeah, it's Kyle Lowry without question.
Yeah. And it's sort of like, who is, and it's kind of like that argument we have, who's the greatest player to put this jersey on and who's the best player. Like, it's kind of like one of those, because it's like, is he the most talented player to ever put that jersey on? Absolutely not. We're not saying that. We're just saying, as a guy who embraced being on that team, embraced that city, was embraced by that city, and who led them in the trenches no matter what, win, lose, or draw. Because if it was up to him, he would have stayed a Raptor for life. It would have never been another team that he would have been on if it was up to him. But things happen, but I'm glad that the franchise signed him back to allow him to retire as a Raptor, because I felt like that was fitting. It's certain guys that have been synonymous with one jersey over pretty much the course of their career. Dwayne Wade with Miami, Kobe with LA, Dirk with, the Mavericks. So it was good that he was able to, finish a long career, got his championship. Happy for him.
I'm glad you broke it down like that too, because when you look at who was the best player to put this jersey on versus who was the best player during their time with the organization, you very well can compare this to the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. Dwayne Wade is the greatest Miami Heat player in terms of being a Miami Heat player and what he means to the organization. But he's not the best Miami Heat player to ever put that jersey on. That is LeBron James without question.
And to be fair, it's like you gotta know what the difference is, because, like I said, it's more of a, like, I mean, for God's sake, you got Wade County. Like, that's what he meant to that city. And if it weren't for a couple of things that went wrong, he would have never, ever been in Cleveland. He would have never been in Chicago. He wanted to always be a Miami Heat, and I'm glad that he retired, the right way as well with Miami. But certain times when you got to have that argument with people, and I'm like, you got to understand it's a big difference between best player to put the jersey on.
And we're saying that as two people that saw prime D Wade. We saying that as people that saw that 5-year
When he
run with
was
him
really
splash.
flash. That was flash. I don't know if people remember. Before LeBron, I know that they were saying what he was when LeBron was there. That was flash. That was the second best shooting guard in the league. And in some years, you could even say him and Kobe were 1A, 1B because that's how good he was. 30 point per game score. I saw him go toe to toe. Even when I used to watch my Atlanta Hawks, I saw it. So yeah, Dwayne Wade is still the greatest player in the Miami Heat organization. LeBron is the best player to ever put the jersey on. But the greatest Miami Heat is Dwayne Wade. Similar with Kyle Lowry. He's the greatest Toronto Raptor of all time.
Well, speaking of jerseys and switching gears back to the NFL, the Commanders are set to retire John Riggins, number 44. Well, I guess it's better late than never, because I could have swore this was already done, KB.
Probably should have been. Like I said, we weren't old enough to see John Riggins, but if you watch any of the highlights, you can understand what he meant to that city and that team. One of the best running backs that you can honestly see, a very power back. So I look at it like this: can we normalize retiring these jerseys while these people are old enough to even, well, not old enough, but are able to enjoy it, be able to attend these ceremonies, because it is very significant. I don't want, I don't want any type of jersey retirements after a player's gone, no longer here, because we see it all the time. These players are dropping like flies nowadays, so we want to give these people their flowers while they're alive, and I felt like that was something that should have been done a long time ago. But shout out to them for doing it.
And we just want to preface, we know that John Riggins is still here, and as far as we know, he's doing well.
Yeah.
But this shouldn't have taken 40 plus years to happen.
No, because it's not like you have certain cornerstone players in franchise history. Like across every NFL franchise, you have certain players that changed the name of the game for you. I think that it was just more so me saying that we got to start doing these things a little bit sooner. I know they take time and all of that, but shouldn't have took this long.
Oh no, I know exactly
that
what
was
you
my
were
point.
saying. I know exactly what you were saying with that. And you can make an argument that there hasn't been a more impactful player or since that era per se. Because I know you got your Darryl Greens and you got the Art Monks. I don't count guys like Bruce Smith and Deion Sanders, who did not spend the majority of their careers or the best years of their careers playing for Washington. Champ Bailey didn't play his best years in Washington, but he was a stud in Washington when he was there. But when you think of John Riggins, you think of names like Art Monk and Darryl Green and players who were that impactful with their organization. KB, all those dudes I named, Darryl Green played the longest. And I think he retired in 1999, if I'm not mistaken. That's 27 years ago. I don't know if this was Dan Snyder or what this was, but this took way too long to happen. But I'm glad that it's happening now. And, we look forward to the ceremony, and hopefully they actually show the ceremony and we actually get to see it on TV. To a little bit of college basketball news for you, Marcus Spears Jr., if you haven't had a chance to see his highlight tape, my goodness, you need to go check that out. He will no longer be in the class of 2027. He is reclassified to 2026, and he has committed to the Texas Longhorns. That's going to be a show.
Big move. And I ain't going to lie, I know his dad proud of him. But if you haven't had a chance to go watch his highlight, this guy the real deal. He's gonna make Texas one of them ones. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's gonna do. I'm glad that he is going to Texas, one of my favorite teams to watch. So it's gonna be very interesting. But congratulations to him. And I don't think a lot of people understand about when you're reclassifying, you got to be that guy. You got to be that guy to be able to reclassify to a different class. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can be, and it's going to be interesting with him, Tyron Stokes, them being in college basketball next year. Well, yeah, next year. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of things are going to go on for them in the SEC.
Do you think that Spears is going to be a one and done player?
Yeah, I do.
And I think that this was very much needed for next year's draft.
Yeah, it has a little bit more pop now that you got him to reclassify. Yeah, I think that he is going to be. I think that he has that talent. I do.
Well, from talking about the up and coming to The guys is getting ready to hang it up. Justin Verlander, man, Major League Baseball announcing on Wednesday that this will be the final season of his career. They continuing to just say farewell to the game, y'all. The guys we grew up watching, the faces continue to change as it should. That's how it's supposed to be. But this is one of the greatest pitchers of all time. He's one of the greatest of his generation. You think of three names when you think about the generation that Verlander was in. You think about Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw. Those were the big three of that era. Kershaw said farewell last season. Verlander saying farewell this season. We'll see what Max Scherzer does going forward. But man, you think about those years in Detroit, especially that 2011 season when he won the AL Cy Young and the AL MVP. Special. And then being able to go to Houston as the veteran pitcher and basically still look like the ace on that pitching staff, winning 2 World Series rings there. Just phenomenal career.
Yeah, like you said, one of the best pitchers of his generation, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Shout out to Major League Baseball for making him the legend pick of the MLB All-Star game. Definitely needed. We saw Clayton Kershaw hang it up last year. So, end of an era, the tide's turning in Major League Baseball, as it does with all sports. But, definitely going to be one of the greatest farewells to one of the best pitchers of all time. And like you said, one of the best pitchers of our generation that we had to grow up watching. We know what he did in Detroit. We know what he did in Houston. And it's just, a true showman of the game. Put on some of the greatest pitching performances that we've ever seen. So, shout out to a great career. And wish him well in his next chapter.
And does everybody understand that at one point, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer were in the same pitching rotation with the Detroit Tigers?
Man, I don't think people understand to have to deal with the hell that they came with, having to deal with those two on back-to-backs. Yeah, you weren't seeing peace at all. So, yeah, I think that is one of those things that we haven't seen two pitchers that elite since maybe the Braves did it with I'm
sorry. Had Maddox, you had Glavine.
Maddox, yeah.
The Braves had 3. The Braves had 3 with Greg Maddox, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, but definitely Glavine and Maddox.
Glavine and Maddox, yep. So it is something special to see, man. Like I said, if you were fortunate to see it at that time, you understand how great it was watching greatness perform on a nightly basis.
The thing that you question the most about it is how did they not get at least one? Because they went to a couple, or they at least went to one, and they had a chance to go to a couple more. You question how did they not get one though?
I mean, yeah, you question it, but that just goes with how baseball. Sometimes the most talented team doesn't win, and that's just really how the game is different. Baseball is different than I feel like any other sport. The most talented team don't necessarily always win because we know as well as anyone getting it hot at the right time matters. So, and we've seen teams go on magical runs. So, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't because really Detroit they needed one with them.
And I know that Houston had some great years with Verlander there, but I'm always going to remember him as a Detroit Tiger. And I'm going to remember those teams that I watched in high school that had him and Max Scherzer in the pitching rotation. Doug Fister was in there. He was decent for them at the time, too. And an offense that was led by Miguel Cabrera, who was arguably the best player in baseball at the time, at least top 5. Prince Fielder, he wasn't the Prince Fielder that he was in Milwaukee, but he was still a good player at the time, too. Those were some really good Detroit Tigers teams in the early 2010s, man.
Absolutely. Like I said, shout out to a great career, and we'll see. Like I said, we'll see if he still stays in baseball at some capacity. Maybe even possibly looking at, being on the administrative role or as far as management goes. We'll see. But like I said, one of the greatest showmen for the game that we've ever seen.
All right, that's going to wrap up part 1 of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. But we'll be right back. Part 2, NFC North. And we got a special guest joining us to break it down. X and KB coming at you. We'll be right back.